You are unfit to serve. The words cracked through the chamber like a whip, delivered with Jordan Peterson's unmistakable edge. The insult wasn't just spoken, it was hurled, meant to wound, meant to echo beyond those walls. A sudden hush swept over the room. Even those used to fiery debates froze, unsure whether they had just witnessed a slip of the tongue or a deliberate attempt to strip a woman of her dignity before the nation. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't look down, didn't fumble for notes, didn't show the faintest crack in her composure. She simply fixed her eyes on Peterson, her stare steady, unshaken, cutting through the noise like steel. Around her, the audience shifted uneasily in their seats. Some gasped audibly, others whispered, as if unable to believe what had just been said so brazenly. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every flicker of expression, every bead of sweat forming on foreheads not her own. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath. For a heartbeat, time slowed. You could hear the rustle of papers, the faint creak of leather chairs, the low hum of electricity in the lights above. And in that silence, the weight of Peterson's words grew heavier, pressing down like a storm cloud gathering before the first strike of lightning. He had drawn a line, and everyone watching knew what it meant. This wasn't a debate. It was an attack. But Crockett remained still, her lips tightening just slightly into something between restraint and resolve. That calmness, that refusal to bend under the insult, only deepened the drama. Viewers watching live leaned closer to their screens. Allies held their breath in anticipation. Opponents smirked, certain they had just witnessed Peterson cement his dominance. They didn't know her. They didn't know what she carried into that room, what fire had shaped her voice, what evidence she had tucked away for a moment just like this. Peterson thought he had spoken the final word. He believed his reputation, his intellect, his following made him untouchable. But what no one in that chamber knew, Crockett had come prepared with something Peterson could never silence. The chamber was still buzzing from the sting of Peterson's words, but beneath the surface of that moment lay something far greater than one insult. This clash was not born in isolation. It was the collision of two visions of America, one that clung to hierarchy and gatekeeping, and another that demanded space for dignity, truth, and representation. To understand why Peterson's remark landed like a thunderclap, you had to understand the stakes. Jordan Peterson was not just a speaker in that room. He was a cultural figurehead, adored by his base for his defiance of what he called political correctness, and reviled by progressives for dismissing systemic injustice. His voice carried influence far beyond academia, shaping debates on gender, identity, and belonging. When he said someone was unfit, it wasn't just an opinion. It was a pronouncement from a man treated by many as an oracle. And when that judgment targeted Jasmine Crockett, it was more than personal. It was political, racial, a generational all at once. Crockett represented something Peterson's world often failed to reckon with: a young black woman rising in power, unapologetic, unwilling to shrink herself to fit a mold. Her very presence in Congress, sharp-tongued and unyielding, symbolized change. For Peterson, calling her unfit was a way of questioning not just her competence, but the legitimacy of everything she stood for. It was a coded attack on the people who had lifted her up: immigrants, working-class families, women of color who had been told all their lives that they were too loud, too angry, too unrefined to lead. The room sensed it, even if no one dared to say it out loud. To many watching, this wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a test of whose vision would define the future, a future rooted in the rigid past or one written by those long excluded from the table. Every second stretched into suspense. Peterson sat tall, as if certain the moment belonged to him, certain that his words would go unchallenged, certain that Crockett would be forced into silence or defense. And yet, beneath her calm exterior, there was an unspoken promise. She was not there to be diminished, because Jasmine Crockett had come prepared, not just with sharp wit, but with proof, with a weapon Peterson could not anticipate. And when she reached for it, the entire chamber, the entire nation would see the balance of power shift in real time. But the question was how. What could possibly turn such an insult on its head and do it so completely that it would ricochet beyond those walls into every living room, every phone screen, every headline in America? The answer was waiting, just out of sight. And when it came, it would not just answer Peterson's charge. It would change the story forever. Jordan Peterson's rise to prominence reads like a study in contradiction. On one hand, he was lauded as a brilliant psychologist, a man capable of dissecting human behavior with surgical precision, a voice of reason for those seeking clarity in an increasingly chaotic world. On the other hand, he had become notorious for his combative rhetoric, for lectures that quickly devolved into public battles over identity, hierarchy, and societal norms. His followers revered him as a champion of logic and individual responsibility, but critics painted him as a symbol of arrogance, a figure more interested in asserting dominance than fostering dialogue. Peterson's intellectual persona was meticulously crafted. In lecture halls, he spoke of the dangers of chaos and the importance of structure, of personal accountability as the foundation of a meaningful life. Those messages resonated with millions who felt adrift in a culture shifting faster than tradition could accommodate. He became a lodestar for disillusioned audiences, a man who promised that clarity was possible if only one adhered to the truths he articulated. Yet, beneath this veneer of scholarly rigor lay a tendency toward condescension, a readiness to dismiss voices that challenged his worldview. His career was marked by high-profile clashes that cemented his reputation for controversy. From university campuses to media interviews, he had confronted progressives, feminists, and activists with a sharp tongue, often framing their arguments as symptomatic of societal decline. Each confrontation added to his mythology, the fearless intellectual standing his ground against what he perceived as ideological overreach. Yet each victory also sowed seeds of vulnerability. Critics noted inconsistencies in his positions, moments where the rhetoric of personal responsibility clashed with his own evasions of accountability. In essence, the more he proclaimed invincibility, the more fragile his public image became. By the time he faced Jasmine Crockett, Peterson was accustomed to dominating conversations. He had grown confident, even complacent, in his role as the disruptor of progressive discourse. He expected deference, anticipated admiration, and thrived on the spectacle of his own authority. When he called Crockett unfit to serve, it was in line with a pattern he had cultivated over years: assert dominance, unsettle the opponent, and leave the audience questioning who held the moral high ground. But there was a critical oversight. Peterson had never encountered an opponent who matched his intellect, yet carried an unshakable moral core. Crockett was not merely another debater to be outmaneuvered. She was someone whose preparation, courage, and lived experience gave her tools he had never faced. His confidence, which had served him well in countless arenas, became a liability. Each prior clash had reinforced his belief that brilliance alone guaranteed control. What he did not realize was that control was temporary, and the right counter could dismantle years of constructed authority in moments. Peterson's backstory, therefore, is not just a chronicle of achievement. It is a portrait of hubris, a man celebrated for clarity yet prone to arrogance, a figure whose intellectual fire had won him accolades but also blinded him to the stakes of facing someone like Crockett. The stage was set not merely for debate, but for exposure, for the unmasking of contradictions he had long evaded. And as the cameras lingered on him in the chamber, smug, self-assured, the audience sensed that his moment of dominance was about to be tested in ways he could not anticipate. The very foundation of his public persona, the meticulous intellect, the commanding presence, the unyielding confidence, was about to collide with a force designed to reveal its fragility. Jasmine Crockett's story begins far from the polished chambers of Congress, in neighborhoods where opportunity was often scarce, but resilience was abundant. Born into a family that valued education, integrity, and service, she learned early that the world would not hand her respect. She would have to earn it, moment by moment, word by word. Her parents, immigrants who had faced systemic barriers themselves, instilled in her a relentless drive to excel, paired with an unshakable moral compass. From them, she inherited a belief that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. School was the first arena where Crockett's determination became visible. Teachers noticed a young girl who asked hard questions, who refused to accept simple answers, who demanded evidence and clarity. Her peers often looked to her for guidance, and while she was never one to dominate the room for vanity, her presence was commanding, calm, confident, and unafraid to challenge assumptions. These early experiences shaped her sense of justice, teaching her that leadership required not just knowledge, but empathy and the courage to confront inequity. Law school became a proving ground for Crockett's skills, intellect, and resolve. She navigated a world designed to reward the familiar and exclude the outsiders, excelling academically while also advocating for underrepresented communities. It was here that she honed the rhetorical precision that would later make her a formidable force on the national stage. Arguments were crafted not to attack, but to illuminate truth, to dismantle flawed logic with clarity and grace. Each courtroom victory, each debate, each negotiation built the foundation for a leader who understood the mechanics of power, yet never lost sight of the human stakes. Her early career in public service further revealed her character. Crockett worked tirelessly to amplify voices that had been marginalized for decades: immigrants, women, working-class families, and communities of color. She faced institutional resistance, political pushback, and personal attacks, yet she persevered, always grounded in the principle that public office was a platform for service, not self-promotion. Her reputation grew not through spectacle, but through results, measurable improvements in access, equity, and accountability. Crockett's presence in Congress was more than symbolic. It was revolutionary in its normalcy. A woman of color holding office not as a token, but as a skilled legislator whose intellect and dedication could not be ignored. She had studied, prepared, and anticipated every challenge, building a mental arsenal of strategies, responses, and evidence that would protect her in moments of confrontation. Every insult, every attack she had faced before had been a rehearsal for moments like the one she now confronted with Peterson. And yet, Crockett's strength was not merely in preparation or intellect. It was in her poise under pressure, her ability to turn hostility into opportunity, to convert tension into clarity. She had learned from life that those who attempt to intimidate often underestimate the resolve of someone who has faced systemic barriers their entire lives. Her journey had forged patience, empathy, and timing, the tools of a leader capable of seizing the exact right moment to turn the tide. As she sat in the chamber, the weight of Peterson's words hanging in the air, the audience could see that her calm was not passive. It was intentional. It was the quiet force of someone who understood the narrative, who had anticipated the challenge, and who was poised to respond with precision, authority, and moral clarity. Every element of her past, upbringing, education, advocacy, and resilience had been training for this instant. And in that stillness, she was ready. Ready not just to rebut a single insult, but to transform the confrontation into a national lesson on dignity, truth, and the power of preparation. Every glance, every measured breath, every subtle shift of expression was a reminder that Crockett was not merely reacting. She was setting the stage for history. The chamber, unaware of the storm about to unfold, held its collective breath. And in that suspended moment, it was clear Peterson's challenge was no longer just an insult. It was the spark that would reveal the full force of Crockett's courage, intellect, and unassailable moral authority. The tension in the chamber thickened with every passing second. Jordan Peterson, emboldened by his own reputation, leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Each word he spoke carried the weight of calculated superiority. "Your approach lacks the rigor necessary for leadership," he said, his tone sharp, almost surgical. The words were designed to unsettle, to provoke, to make Crockett doubt herself in front of the nation. But Crockett did not flinch. She listened with the patience of someone who had faced opposition her entire life and knew the exact moment to strike back. Peterson continued, layering his critique with pointed examples, anecdotes, and insinuations that aimed to question her competence, experience, and judgment. He believed the verbal barrage would break her, that his accumulated authority and the momentum of the audience's anticipation would force her into submission. Every gesture, every smirk, every calculated pause was meant to remind the room who was in control. The cameras captured it all, close-ups of his measured gestures, the slight tightening of his jaw, the deliberate inflection of each word. But Crockett's calm was unshakable. Her composure became a weapon in itself, silently undermining his performance. She maintained eye contact, her posture unyielding, her responses measured and precise. Every time Peterson thought he had landed a blow, she deflected it with poise, exposing the arrogance in his tone and the gaps in his logic. Her presence was magnetic. The audience couldn't look away. Allies felt a surge of pride. Opponents felt the subtle unease of witnessing a carefully constructed facade begin to wobble. Whispers began to ripple through the chamber. Staffers and attendees exchanged glances, sensing that this debate had moved beyond mere rhetoric. The energy shifted. The room seemed to lean toward Crockett, drawn to her calm authority, her refusal to let insult dictate the narrative. Peterson, for all his intellect and preparation, faced the rare and unnerving reality of an opponent who refused to yield. Every attempt to dominate was met with subtle resistance. Every pointed accusation met with measured counterweight. And then came the moments of escalation. Peterson, sensing the balance slipping, raised his voice slightly, layering condescension over critique. Crockett remained steady, answering not with anger, but with deliberate clarity, her words cutting deeper because they were grounded in truth and preparation rather than reaction. The contrast could not have been clearer. A man accustomed to commanding the stage against compliant adversaries versus a woman whose authority was quiet, disciplined, and unassailable. The tension reached its peak as Peterson tried one final tactic, the emotional appeal. He gestured broadly, referencing societal expectations, public perception, and personal credibility. The chamber felt the weight of his confidence, but Crockett had anticipated this. She allowed him to finish, holding the room in suspense, letting his words hang in the air like a trap that would soon spring back on him. And then she moved, just slightly, reaching for the microphone. The subtle shift was almost imperceptible, yet it carried a promise. What was coming next would not just answer his challenge. It would redefine the debate entirely. The audience leaned forward. The cameras captured every heartbeat, and the air itself seemed to tremble with anticipation. The storm was about to break. As the chamber emptied and the echoes of Peterson's disrupted composure faded, the real battlefield came alive, the internet. Within minutes, clips of Jasmine Crockett's flawless mic drop had begun circulating across social media platforms, shared, reshared, and dissected with fervor. Twitter exploded first. Hashtags like hashtag unfit backfired, hashtag Crockett wins, and hashtag truth over arrogance trended within the hour. Every retweet carried a sense of validation, a communal nod to a moment that felt bigger than any one debate. The footage spread like wildfire. TikTok users transformed Crockett's calm delivery and precise articulation into bite-sized, shareable content. Some overlaid with dramatic music, others subtitled for maximum impact. On YouTube, reaction channels dissected every second of the exchange, highlighting the contrast between Peterson's faltering confidence and Crockett's unwavering poise. Each clip drew millions of views, comments flowing in by the thousands. The narrative was clear. Peterson, the untouchable intellectual, had been exposed, and Crockett's calculated brilliance had captivated a nation. Commentators across the political spectrum scrambled to make sense of the moment. Conservative pundits, caught off guard by the viral reach, offered tepid defenses or attempted to reframe the narrative, but the momentum had already shifted. Clips showing Peterson's momentary discomfort and Crockett's precise articulation became the centerpiece of the debate coverage, leaving little room for narrative salvage. Progressive voices, meanwhile, celebrated. Analysts praised Crockett's preparation, moral clarity, and rhetorical skill, framing the event as a watershed moment. A demonstration that courage, intelligence, and preparation could topple the arrogance of a public figure who had grown too confident in his invulnerability. Across the nation, audiences felt a sense of participation. Social media users weren't just observers. They were part of a chorus celebrating accountability and integrity. Memes and reaction threads multiplied, blending humor with admiration. Some highlighted the irony of Peterson's words being used against him. Others praised Crockett's timing, poise, and refusal to rise to provocation. The moment had transformed from a congressional confrontation into a cultural touchstone, a story everyone wanted to tell, debate, and share. News outlets quickly picked up on the trend. Morning shows, cable news panels, and online articles examined the exchange frame by frame, debating its implications. Peterson's allies argued over semantics, tried to minimize the fallout, but the viral recordings refused to be contained. In digital spaces, the story evolved organically, as if the nation itself were weighing in. Each post, each comment, each share was an affirmation. The values Crockett embodied, preparation, dignity, and courage, had resonated with a broad audience, creating an emotional resonance that no clever spin could erase. Even outside the political sphere, the impact was palpable. Everyday viewers, immigrants, women, and marginalized communities felt reflected in Crockett's victory. For many, her poised rebuttal symbolized the possibility of confronting power without sacrificing one's principles. The discussion extended into podcasts, late-night commentary, and viral TikTok duets. Every space amplified the message, reinforcing a sense that this wasn't just a debate clip, but a moment of national significance. By evening, it was clear that the exchange would not be forgotten. The shockwaves reached far beyond the chamber walls, entering living rooms, offices, classrooms, and online communities. Crockett had transformed a personal attack into a nationwide lesson in accountability, proving that preparation, calm authority, and moral clarity could not only counter arrogance, but make it crumble. The story was no longer hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had ever faced doubt, criticism, or attempts to undermine them, and it inspired a collective belief that integrity could prevail in the face of intimidation. The chamber might have been silent after the debate, but online, the conversation roared. And as the night wore on, it became apparent. This was not a fleeting moment. The recording, the counterattack, the viral amplification, all of it had created a ripple that would continue to expand, challenging assumptions, redefining narratives, and reminding the nation that truth, courage, and dignity always demand to be seen. When the dust settled, Crockett seized the moment to reframe the insult that had been thrown at her. Calm but unwavering, she addressed the chamber and the nation at large. When they call us unfit, they mean unafraid. And that's exactly what terrifies them. The words landed like a declaration, transforming what was intended as a slight into a rallying cry. It was a masterclass in perspective, showing that insults lose their power when met with clarity, confidence, and truth. Her message resonated far beyond the walls of that debate. It was a universal reminder that dignity is not granted by others. It is earned, defended, and embodied. Arrogance, no matter how loud or imposing, collapses under scrutiny when faced with preparation, honesty, and moral courage. Crockett had not only defended herself, she had illustrated a broader principle. Strength is measured by composure, truth, and resilience, not by the ability to dominate others with bluster or authority. The crescendo of the moment carried both inspiration and affirmation. For viewers across the country, her response was a reminder that even in an age saturated with cynicism, truth still matters. Power is not defined solely by influence or reputation. It is defined by integrity and the courage to stand firm in the face of intimidation. Crockett's victory was symbolic, showing that preparation, intellect, and moral conviction can overcome attempts to demean or diminish. This was more than a single debate. It was proof that the principles of justice, courage, and dignity remain potent weapons in a world that often rewards spectacle over substance. In reframing the narrative, Crockett had given the audience more than a rebuttal. She had given them a vision of leadership worth aspiring to, a testament to the enduring power of truth, and a reminder that courage and action can inspire a nation. As the video draws to a close, it's clear that what unfolded in that chamber was more than a clash of personalities. It was a lesson for a nation. Peterson's attempt to label Crockett unfit backfired spectacularly, and in the process, she demonstrated what true leadership looks like: preparation, courage, and dignity under fire. The message is simple but powerful. Arrogance may make noise, but it is truth and integrity that leave a lasting mark. Crockett's calm authority, the surgical use of the recording, and her ability to turn insult into opportunity has left an indelible impression. Across social media, across news outlets, and in the hearts of viewers, her example resonates as a reminder that preparation, resilience, and moral clarity can challenge the most imposing opponents. It's a story that validates the experiences of those who have been underestimated or dismissed, showing that the unafraid can not only survive but thrive when they act with integrity. Now it's your turn. Share this story. Talk about it. Let others know what it means to stand firm in the face of intimidation and to wield truth as a weapon against arrogance. Subscribe to the channel to follow more moments where courage meets clarity, where heroes rise, and where ordinary people witness extraordinary acts of leadership. Be part of a community that values integrity, resilience, and the power of knowledge over bluster. Because this isn't just one debate. It's proof that speaking truth, standing your ground, and refusing to be silenced can inspire millions. And as Crockett showed, the most powerful victories often happen not with shouts or spectacle, but with quiet confidence, meticulous preparation, and unwavering moral clarity. Join the movement, share the message, and witness the ongoing triumph of dignity over arrogance.